always like to surround myself with motivational people, inspirational folks, and like-minded folks, and well, not just like-minded, but people in all walks of life that can help me learn and stuff like that. So that's why initially I reached out to your wife. I saw the content she's putting out. It's amazing. Love everything that she's doing. And then I followed your account and I was like, holy crap, this dude's in the same realm, if not more. It looks like you're probably a little more, I guess you're the one who's probably kicked off the family introduction into the carnivore world. But yeah, man, introduce yourself and tell people what you do.
Yeah, my name's Zach Solt. I'm actually a co-owner with a company with my wife, Dr. Sabrina Solt. We have a men's health program that's geared around pretty all aspects of men's health, whether it comes from ED, erectile dysfunction is a big issue that we cover, and also in diet and nutrition, because a lot of the problems that we see from men today, especially young men, we keep blaming the parents and this and that. But I mean, if we look at the diet that the kids are on, I mean, it's not their fault that they have all these issues, So our main focus is to just help men be the best versions of themselves, and also just building relationships, and then also parenting and fathering, because I mean that's a huge deal today too. So you were talking about my wife, and initially when I had started the carnivore thing, it was kind of a Hail Mary to help cure some of the stuff that I had gone through. And a lot of that had to do with addiction and just eating a terrible diet. I mean, before a year ago, I was probably eating pizza every single day. I didn't look like it, right? Because I was in the gym, I was working out, but inside I was falling apart. And my wife's a naturopath, and for naturopaths, the idea of not eating a vegetable is just like it's verboten. It's not allowed. So it took a while to convert her.
So what were some of the things that you were dealing with on the inside of your body, or that maybe from a cognitive perspective, before you made the transition?
Yeah. So, the big thing that we don't realize is that our food is poisoning us. Everything that we touch and put in our bodies is in some way a toxin. There's some sort of toxin in it. And there's three forms of stress. You got physical, chemical, and emotional stress. And we are constantly, undergoing emotional stress from ourselves, whether it's our lives or things that we get ourselves into. But the chemical stress that comes from our environment is way worse, and it's something that's overlooked. And I struggled with high inflammation, especially my vascular system, inflammatory markers like myeloperoxidase. And this is a hidden marker that a lot of people never get checked. Unless you go to your doctor and say, I would like to get a cardiac stress, panel done. Most people don't know they're walking around with this. So, and we've seen this in practice with my wife, is these men that are relatively in good shape and they've been working out and they're doing all the right things, so they say or think, and their MPO is through the roof, and they're actually damaging their arteries while they're doing all this stuff. And the other thing that people don't understand is that, yeah, you can work out, but working out is also a stress, right? We have this idea that somehow working out is inherently good for us, when it is in a way, but it's also, if you're being damaged by all these other things, working out could actually make it worse, which is what I was doing, right? I would go into the gym, I was working out, my inflammatory markers kept staying high and going up, not down, and I couldn't figure out why. So, giving your body a break, and, not just like, health is not going to the gym and working out for 2 or 3 hours a day, so we have to pay attention to those things. And I was also struggling with addiction. I've had I was in the military. I had a pretty rough childhood. I've been in and out of. When I was a kid, I was sent to a boarding school in Jamaica, and I got introduced to drugs pretty early. So I had always kind of had an on and off addictions, mostly with cocaine and stimulants. So up until recently, before the carnivore diet, I had always struggled with, when I would do those things and destroy my body, I would also eat poorly, because if you're not taking care of yourself, you don't care about these other things. So what I learned from carnivore is that when I care about what I'm eating every day, I care more about the other things that I'm doing to my body. So I was never able to overcome addiction, because one would lead to another, whether it's eating pizza or ice cream or junk food, that makes you feel good. Well, that's an addiction, so we are not supposed to be addicted to our diet. That's supposed to be fuel for human beings. So when we give up those addictions, when you stop eating the sugar and the carbs, and you're like having that cycle, it's very easy to give up other things. And I learned that really fast. Like, wow, this really works.
Do you think that the positive effects of carnivore are because of you're completely reversing the way that you eat, like pizza and candy and sugar, coffee? So clearly, like, and this goes for veganism too. If someone switches off the standard American diet and then they go to a vegan diet that's a whole food, or whole food vegan diet, or clean carnivore diet, do you think those positive effects will eventually just kind of still out there? Like, do you think they'll keep going up or down? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I, I'm a firm believer that humans are obligate carnivores, and this is just based on data. That it's very easy. If you look, look at our stomach pH. It's 1.5, right? A lion is 2 to 2.2, somewhere in that range. Our stomach acid is like 4 times more acidic than a dog's. We don't have a cecum. Most other animals that are omnivores and or herbivores have a cecum, right? So there's all these different things that show us that we're not supposed to be eating, these plant foods, and all disease starts with that, right? You're never going to. I was talking to my wife about this the other day. Is I've never had a hangover from a steak, right? If I've eaten too much rice or eaten too much bread at a restaurant, you've left the restaurant like, oh my God, I feel terrible, right? You get it's a food hangover. All drugs are plant-based, right? You get a hangover from doing too much, of any particular drug. So do I think that there's a benefit to stopping, like the seed oils and the junk food? Absolutely. But the real health comes from, and I don't know if you've talked to Dr. Chafee before, but he says that last 10% of feeling amazing comes from the 5% that you give up, that you still are eating of plants, right? Whether it's coffee. And in my experience, that's true. It's once we may feel better, but health is a spectrum of, so if I'm living here and I don't know, and I'm no longer doing drugs and I'm no longer eating the junk food, I feel better, but my baseline is only what I know, right? I could be up here. And what is it that I'm doing that's not, so I have nothing to compare it to if I've never done it before. So a lot of people, yes, they feel great, but it's only because they've jumped up from down here, right? It's a higher jump to go from feeling, terrible, from treating, eating terrible food, and then you start to feel better. But ultimate health comes from, not poisoning your body. And all plants exist on a spectrum of toxicity. That's not a debate. We know that these toxins are there. But again, I've never had a hangover from steak.
Right.
I can't actually eat enough steak to feel terrible because my body has, my hormones work to slow all that down and say, hey, you should stop eating, which doesn't happen when you eat rice, right? You go to eat tacos, I can eat 12 of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, right.
You talked about the inflammation. Is there a way that people can tell that they have high inflammation without doing blood work? Like, what are some of the key indicators?
Well, we talked about stress earlier, the physical, chemical, and emotional stress. The first, the thing that happens with stress that we don't really like, us feeling anxious or responding poorly to things that happen to us, like, getting into arguments, or, like we come home from work and, the kids may ask us a simple question and we blow up, right? Because we're stressed out. Those kind of stressors come from the constant bombardment or those sort of reactions. And I think that we live in a fight or flight because of that. So I believe that, like, if you're driving to work and somebody, does something that you don't like and you get upset and you have that reaction, that is your indicator to say, hey, I'm responding poorly to stuff that really doesn't matter. And that's a pretty good indicator that you have those, that you have inflammation, because, those stressors cause inflammation. Your body uses inflammation to heal. So it's doing and it's an intelligent response. It's not a negative thing. If we didn't have inflammation, you die when you get cut, right?
Right.
But the constant, every day I'm eating something that's gone just a tiny bit every day. And then, I go online or Facebook and somebody says something I don't like. And then I get into, like the back and forth. So I kind of know that, my stress levels and stuff is kind of a good indicator of what the rest of my body's doing.
So how long have you been a carnivore?
I started in January, so it's what's man, time goes by fast. But yeah, I started back in January. So I think January 5th was the first time where I was like, you know what, that's it. I'm not going to have anything. And I had a pretty rough Christmas, or not Christmas, but a New Year's, right? So with drugs and stuff. So I was like, you know what, this is what I got to do. I just have to stop. This has to stop. So that's what I did to accomplish it.
Was it was it a easy transition for you? Like, what did you still have, like potatoes or other foods with the transition, or was just, everything meat?
Actually, for me, it was so natural and so easy that I was like, why have I not done this before? Right? People think, oh, I could never just sit down and eat only a steak, until you do it. And you're like, yeah, this actually feels good. Feels like something I'm supposed to be doing. Right? I have no negative side effects. There's no food baby. There's no hangover.
Right.
There's no stomach problems. And I had actually suffered from Crohn's disease for a long time, right? I mean, the military, they gave me more vaccine, than you could possibly imagine. So I was carrying all that stuff and inflammation from that from years and years. I'm pretty sure that's why I developed Crohn's disease, and it was gone within weeks. It wasn't even like a long transition period. It was basically just like bad poop to just like great poop the next day. It was really fast. So that was kind of cool. And speaking of that, we have a group on Facebook. It's called Carnivore Harder, Happier, Healthier. And there's so many stories in there of people with autoimmune diseases the autoimmune diseases are from a spectrum of like, small to just like debilitating things. And there's so many of them. And it just seems that the common factor is that a carnivore diet, for some reason, just like they're gone.
Yeah.
And
I'm reading this book right now that talks about like soil biology and soil biodiversity. And in there's a section on there that talks about autoimmune diseases. And I think there's more autoimmune diseases than we actually know. There's like 88 something that are actually well known, and that can be diagnosed, but there's a far greater number that scientists haven't even scratched the surface on. So and a lot of it, this book is talking about how it's related to things that we consume, or not even consume, but are just around in our environment.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, what they call those? They call them idiopathic, right? Because we're the idiots, right? We don't know what causes them, and it's so obvious to me that let's look in nature, right? When's the last time you saw a gazelle with dementia or an obese whatever, right? The only animals that suffer from any sort of disease or idiopathic, we say we don't know what causes them, are dogs, cats, humans, and maybe a few farm animals. And what do they all have in common? We decided what they were supposed to eat, right? Human beings are the only species on this planet that needs to be told what to eat. Or what am I supposed to eat? If you go online, everybody's like, what, this diet or that diet. And it's so obvious to me that it comes from eating inappropriate foods. It's species inappropriate foods. And nobody's going to get sick from eating meat, But if you drink Coca-Cola every day, it's going to tear you apart, right? And people say, well, Coca-Cola is different than broccoli. Well, that's probably true in terms of, how much sugar you're getting, but broccoli is 66% carbohydrate. Right? So that means it's 66% sugar. And sure, it doesn't absorb as fast, but at the end of the day, sugar is sugar. We can't really just split everything up. And also, if one plant food that's concentrated in Coca-Cola is bad for you, then why would we not assume that, even if they're not concentrated forms of them, are also not bad for you? We don't need plants in our diet. All of our essential nutrients, all of them, exist in meat. The same thing cannot be said about plants. And essential means you have to eat them, or you can't perform the processes that your body needs to. So if we have to have meat to survive, we don't need plants to survive. Why are we eating the plants? And it is difficult. I'm not saying that it's like, like we've kind of structured our lives around what our parents did and what they did before. And these paradigms are so deep that, we all think it's normal. And, the idea of not eating them sounds crazy, but is it really? Or is it, I wouldn't eat dirt, you know, not because I don't think, I mean, maybe I could eat dirt and get away with it, but it's not in my paradigm to think the dirt's a proper human food. So why would I eat it? You know?
Right.
So,
You know, something that I struggle with and that something I grew up with and I'm trying to break with my kids is I was always told to make a happy plate or finish your food, right? Like finish the entire plate. And I went with that for my entire like 20 year, you know, until I was, you know, about 31 years old. And I think that's why I overate so much because I would always pile up my food and I made it like a goal that I wasn't even trying to make it a goal, but it's just bred in my brain that I need to finish my plate. I have to consume everything on the plate, and I'm trying to break that with my kids. Is that something that you struggled with too?
oh yeah, I mean, I'm the oldest of 8 boys, and I grew up in a small town in Georgia. And you know, when my mom cooked something, you know, it was like I remember my dad saying like, "Your mom makes it, you're going to eat it," right? I mean, just remember like I can hear that, and I'm like, I'm anxious thinking about it. So we all had to finish our plates, and I remember one of my brothers was like super stubborn about it, and he would sit at the table, and we'd all sit at dinner table, and he would refuse to eat, you know, and he'd be like, "Well, you can't get up until you're done," you know, and everybody else would get to go off and go play or go watch a movie or whatever, and he would have to sit there. And I'm like, you know, we have to literally punish our kids to make them want to finish their plate or even eat foods that they don't necessarily like vegetables. I mean, kids don't want to eat vegetables because they're bitter. Right? Bitter tells our bodies are intelligent. We make those receptors to say, "Oh, this is bitter. I probably shouldn't eat it." You know, you're not going to pick eating raw broccoli over a steak. You know what I mean? You just won't. There's you know.
You know, that's funny you mentioned that because with my kids, I have I have twins and they're 3 years old, and we feed them a wide variety of food, but it's a lot of steak and chicken and stuff like that. But they'll always go to the meat first before the broccoli or the carrots or whatever. They'll always go to the meat or the cheese first before anything else. And it's interesting that you said that. Like it's bred in our DNA to eat that stuff first, and we kind of have to fight them to eat the vegetables sometimes.
Yep, my son is. I have my daughter's 4, almost 5, and she's got a little bit of a sweet tooth because we used to feed her a lot more carbs, you know, because we didn't know any better, and so she's kind of got a little bit of a sweet tooth. Like she'll want to eat fruit and stuff like that, but we only have fruit in the house if that's the option for her to eat something sweet. But my son will I can give him pork ribs, beef ribs, and give him the bone, and he will literally eat it like clean, right? He'll give me the bone back and be like, "I need another rib."
Do you supplement at all with anything other than just eat meat, or do you take any supplements?
I do now a few things. Hydrochloric acid, because I have some stomach acid issues from, I'm pretty sure, some of the things that I got in the military. So I take that to help digest. And then occasionally I'll have vitamin B, like methyl vitamin B supplement, and that's because I have the MTHFR defect. So I think, you know, certain things are still going to be missing from our even animal-based foods just because of agriculture, like the way that we do things.
Right.
So I try to eat grass-fed, but other than those two, I don't really think there's. My wife does a few supplements, but I don't really know if they're necessary. You know, I think it's just, and that's another paradigm. Like, oh, we should take supplements, and I don't feel bad taking them, so I don't think that there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah.
But I do know I have some carnivore. I got a guy in our carnivore group who's been carnivore for 7 years, and this guy literally, and I believe him because I've had so many conversations with him. He just does meat, salt, and water. You know, and it's like he does a few like a liver or heart every now and then, which I do too. I'll have a beef heart every now and then. But man, you know, if this guy looks, you know, he looks better than me. He's older. He looks about my same age, and you know, he looks fine. He doesn't have any issues. You know, and he seems to like it. So he'll tell you, nope, don't take any supplements.
Oh, it's interesting. How concerned are you, and how much have you looked into, industrialized farming practices, and antibiotics and stuff like that? How does that really impact the meat from a scientific perspective, and how does that impact us if we consume that stuff?
I think that plants don't have a liver. Okay. A cow, at least when it eats something, it goes through 4 different stomachs, different, processes of breaking it down. A cow has a liver, pretty big liver. The liver is designed to cycle those things out. Does that mean that some of it doesn't end up in the muscle tissue? Probably, maybe it does. So I don't think I say this all the time, I don't think that there's a way not to get poisoned by eating. But the most noxious of all of those are going to be from plants, because plants are inherently toxic to us by themselves. And then we add, 24 different chemicals to them, glyphosate being one of them.
Right.
I do know that there are some studies that show that the amount of glyphosate you get from animal meat is really small compared to just like one meal eating a vegetable by itself. So I don't know if are familiar with Zach Bush, Dr. Zach Bush.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, he's got a couple of videos on that. That's pretty cool about glyphosate. But we just, to me, the goal isn't to be toxin free, because that's kind of a hard thing to accomplish. But if you can at least, avoid all those things and just eat meat, you're going to get a lot less toxins in your diet for sure.
Yeah, I've always wondered that, and maybe I need to go watch some of his videos, because if glyphosate, like, I think there was a recent study that was published that said 80% of the people that they tested, or they got urine from, tested positive with glyphosate. They had some trace amounts of glyphosate in their body. Mm-hmm. And if glyphosate's being used on vegetables and crops and stuff like that, then I have to believe that that overspray is going in on the grassland where the cows eat. So I imagine the cows are consuming that, and that's impacting us somehow.
Yeah, and then, but that's when you look at it is, a plant has absolutely no ability to block these things out, or to get rid of them, but a cow does. So, our liver has to handle all those toxins too. Our blood has to be siphoned out of our blood. Cows have kidneys, that kind of thing. So, yeah, you're probably going to get some of those things, but it's nice to know that the cow's doing some of the work for you, and you're getting a little bit of a filtration, as opposed to just spraying it on a plant sucking it right up into the plant and then just consuming it, just consuming it directly, really. So
you started this transition and you went carnivore. You've been on it for almost a year now. What other, and I'm saying crazy in quotations here, but what other crazy things have you implemented in your life or your family's lives that are out of the norm of the average American family? I'm saying, like, have y'all thrown away like all the plastic? How do y'all source water? Stuff like that.
Yeah, we don't use any plastic in the house. That's one thing that kills men's testosterone. We don't use any I personally don't actually use any soap or anything like that. Most women's bathroom is full of just all kinds of like this and that. Like our bathrooms, there's none of that stuff. My wife uses a particular type of makeup that's super clean. But yeah, we only use glass. I don't cook in pans on the stove unless we make eggs occasionally, because I really don't eat eggs anymore. Everything that we cook is now done on a grill, a smoker grill, so a pellet grill, and that's kind of the way we like it. We don't do the traditional 3 or 4 things for a meal. We sit down to we'll have one meal a day, and we'll have like a big piece of salmon, we'll have some ribs, we'll have a few steaks, and we'll all sit down and eat it. And and then we could pick on it through the rest of the day if we want something later, and that's kind of how we do it. But we don't drink out of plastic for sure. So no plastic water bottles. We don't do caffeine. We don't take a lot of supplements. So we try to just limit what we come in contact with as much as possible, especially for the kids.
So where do y'all get y'all's water from?
We have an RO system. It's one of the best ones you can get. And then I also have a molecular hydrogen water bottle. So it adds hydrogen ions to the water. Not obviously water is H2O, but it adds actual hydrogen gas, which actually helps offset the inflammation that we were talking about before. So that's kind of cool. There's hydrogen machines that you can get. But if I'm going to do something to the water, it's through an RO system, which basically comes out, as clean as it could possibly be. It does take all the fluoride out. That's another one that's really big too, is the fluoride from our water is pretty detrimental, because it affects our hormones. It also, does some damage to our pineal gland. Yeah, I mean, just we just try to stay as safe as possible, and you really don't know what you don't know too. So I think that limiting is, the type of things that you come in contact with every day. Our toothpaste is, fluoride free.
What kind of toothpaste do you use?
You know what? I'd have to go get it for you. My wife gets it from. She's involved in a couple of different groups that kind of. I could just send it to you later.
Okay.
But it's fluoride free, and it's and also our deodorant. We don't use regular deodorant. We use Truly's, which is basically just it's actually made of sugar and coconut oil. And people say that you don't need or that these ones without aluminum don't work, but they really do, right? And the main reason they do is because I'm not being poisoned by all the plants. So I don't stink. It's awesome. That's one of the other side effects from carnivore is that you don't have to detox all those things out of your body if you're not being poisoned. So
yeah,
cool.
That's funny. I can't remember. Maybe it was after I talked to your wife, but somebody I talked to. I stopped using deodorant shortly after because I'm trying to eliminate stuff. So we recently just bought a bunch of glass for food containers and stuff like that, and I'm trying to eliminate like bad, the soaps and all that stuff. And I just stopped using arm deodorant, and I was surprised. I thought I was gonna fucking stink my ass off, man. But I don't. I don't smell bad. Like every now and then I'll check myself, and I'm like, no, I don't stink yet. So.
Yeah, and now a lot of that has to do with not eating grains.
Yeah.
Grains are one of the reasons why people get sick. Yeah, because the grains have a ton. Grains are the most toxic part of the plant, and that includes rice, right? I mean, rice is probably the least offensive out of all of them. But wheat is, if you cut out grains, you'll notice you will stink less. People always give me shit because I say I don't use soap, and I really don't. I haven't used soap in a very long time. I wash myself, I clean myself with a rag, but water is really all you need. I mean, just to rinse yourself off and a lot of those, hey, sir, get down. A lot of those soaps are they're just chemicals,
Right.
And they're not, if they were back in the day, they used to make soap out of fat and blubber, and that doesn't exist anymore.
Like beef tallow and stuff.
Yeah. That's the other thing. My wife uses the beef tallow chapstick now instead of the seed oils and chapstick. Did you know that?
Dude, it's seed oils and everything. And I didn't know that. So my daughter, she's 14 and she's going through the acne stage right now. And I asked her like to bring down what she's using. And we looked at the back of the stuff, and I work at Dow Chemical, and half of that shit like we make at Dow. You know what I mean? And you have to put on like a bunch of PPE, protective gloves, and like
to touch it.
Yeah, touch and work with the equipment. And then at the end of the process, it's putting on a package, and my daughter's putting it on her face.
It makes you wonder, if you look back at history and, when we started to industrialize, like our instincts are so off, like we do something and we say, wow, this makes this so much easier. But every time we have made something easier or think that we're making it better, what happens? We learn, 100 years ago, bloodletting was like a normal thing to like cure. And now we would say, wow, that's insane, And I wonder, like, what are we going to think, in 100 years, we're going to look back at how we're eating. Oh my God, what were they doing? They were literally poisoning themselves with seed oils and, cooking all of their food. You can't go to a restaurant without being poisoned at all.
No.
And it's so sad. And you see people, eating food and just like, they were going to the gym and they're doing all this good stuff, but yet they go out to eat all the time. It's so bad for them,
It's tough though, because if you live this way and you try to eliminate the bad stuff, you're going to be, isolated from your friends and your family, and you're going to be this crazy person. And it's going to be hard to, have those family events and want to hang out with friends and family, because you're going to have to take a sacrifice. Like if I believe what I believe and I don't want to eat the way that my friends and family do, but I want to hang out with them, like I'm going to have to, it's a sacrifice either that one of us are going to have to make, and you're always outnumbered,
Yeah, man. That's the hardest part, honestly, and you're not doing, and the other part is that some people think that you're trying to be healthy. Their instinct is almost to think that you're trying to outdo them. And, in my mind, I want everybody to be just as healthy. I want them to know these things, but their paradigms are so deep that they have no other way of dealing with it other than to think, well, Zach and Sabrina are trying to be better than us. And that's why they do that. And that's why they won't go out to eat, or they refuse to do this. but that's not what it is. I worry that some people are going to get to the end of their life and they're going to be in their 60s and they're like, I'm falling apart and dying. I mean, human beings should live to 120. We know this, right? The geneticists know this information. This has been studied. And most people are not living past 65. And if they do, they're miserable. They're sick. They're taking 20, 30 different medications. And it's like, that's not health. I don't want to live that long and be miserable, So you have to make those sacrifices, man. And the people, what's cool, what we've noticed is that now we have people in our lives that care about those same things. And that's what we want. We want to bring those people into our lives that have those kind of values. And it doesn't mean I don't care about the people that I loved before, but if they don't want to change and it's going to be detrimental to my health, then I have to make that choice.
Right. Have you heard of the argument that gladiators, back in the gladiators days, that they were mostly plant-based? Have you heard that argument before?
I find that really hard to believe. I mean, maybe from the fact that slaves would have been given slave food, which would have been plants, right?
Right.
The Mongols were the most successful military power ever on this planet, and they were basically 100% carnivore. They drank milk and they ate horse meat, and they never had to make campfires. They were and they were furious. They were 6'6", 275 pound, just like monsters. And they destroyed almost 2 continents. Just by going in and pillaging. So I think that's possible. But then do we really know that gladiators were all big and bulk like they are in the movies? Like, we don't know that.
Yeah, we don't.
I mean, we really don't. And if somebody draw a depiction of them on a in some sort of way of showing, hey, this is what happened. These are the gladiators. I mean, maybe they made them look bigger than they really were. Is like, it's all it's drama, right? It's an act. So who knows?
Are you friends with any plant-based people, like on social media or anything?
No, I'm not. People on social media take me one of two things. Either they immediately hate me, or they're like, oh yeah, this guy. They see past that and they're like, he cares, because I grew up where I would rather you tell me the truth and not tell me in a way that makes me feel good about it. I want to know the truth. Just hit me with it, right? Because I think that somebody who cares about you is going to tell you the truth and is not going to necessarily care about how you feel about it because they know the end result is good for you. And that's always been my way. And I have vegans or ex-vegans that were in my group, and I would post something on Facebook. And one of them was, I posted a picture and I wrote in it and I said, salad is the most toxic thing at your dinner table. Fight me. Like, basically just argue with me about it. And one of my friends who's a vegan is now 3-4 months carnivore. She's now a carnivore or a plant-free RN and had never had steak a day in her life. And she made a post about it the other day. She goes, if it wasn't for Zach and his like asshole comment, because it was a little bit like, like that's for most people, that kind of comment would have come across like, even if it's true, it's kind of like poking the bear.
Right.
But sometimes I think, and she goes, I only wanted to prove you wrong. So I dug up that information. Had you not have said anything like that was basically a little bit inflammatory, I probably would have just been like, whatever. But I wanted to prove you wrong so bad. But what I ended up covering up was now she's, all these different things are gone. She's cured all these different things and she's feeling great. And, she thanks me all the time. She sends me messages all the time. Like, you changed my life. You changed my family's life. All because you made some asshole comment.
No, that's great. I asked that question because I've tried to reach out. There's a couple of prominent vegans that are bodybuilders, and they claim to be natural bodybuilders. I want to talk to them and see what their beliefs are, how long they've been vegan, if they go off the rails, if they cheat, But I can't get them on. No one from the vegan community wants to talk, and I'm not like this. I'm not Dr. Sean Baker by any means. But no one wants to talk from the vegan community. But everyone in the carnivore community is pretty open and willing to talk, willing to share stuff. So it's a stark contrast.
Remember when I was talking about the plant toxins and the fight or flight and that whole, like, I gotta, fight or flight is I gotta protect this, or I gotta defend, or, if somebody is, I can't have a conversation because I'm being attacked. And I think that we see in a carnivore community, everybody's open and friendly and wants to communicate. And yeah, maybe we're wrong about a few things, but we're all learning, right? We're in the vegan community. They're much more inflammatory and much more, you're not being vegan like me, so you're a bad person. And that to me is a sign of toxicity. And do I think that there's vegans out there that perform well on a plant-based diet? Sure. Were they always vegan? Maybe, maybe not. And also, 87% of vegans, or is it 84% of vegans don't make it past their first year. Right. I think, and I dated somebody who was vegan, and I watched her eat meat all the time. Okay? Yeah. So what do we know? I mean, let's look at, we know that there's, human beings lie, right? We fib certain things, or we may make the truth sound differently to appeal to whatever position where we want everybody to think. So do I think that vegans lie just like everybody else? Yeah. Right. So maybe they are taking some, protein shake or whatever that's not plant-based, and they're not telling anyone about it, So it really doesn't matter to me, if you feel good on it, but I don't see the response or the lack of connection or trying to build people up from the vegan community. So to me, I don't know. It just doesn't seem like they're really that happy about it, because it seems more about do things my way or you're wrong than it is about trying to feel good or caring about families and kids and stuff like that. So I just don't see it.
I can appreciate their message of wanting to protect the animals and, even protect the climate, because their beliefs on what, cows, how they impact the climate. But if they believe that it's healthy, that always makes me laugh, especially if you look at those vegan burgers. You look at the ingredient list on a vegan burger, it's fucking crazy, dude. It's fucking insane. You can't even pronounce half the thing. It's like looking at my daughter's makeup ingredient list, So I don't think I agree with their message of wanting to protect the animals and the climate. I can appreciate that, but yeah, it can't be for health. And I follow some vegans that are vegan cooks, and they don't look healthy. I follow you and your wife. Y'all look healthy. Y'all look great. Other carnivores and other animal-based nutritionists. But the vegans just don't look very healthy.
Right.
So,
especially after years, right? I do think that, like you said before, some of them look great or they feel great, but Dr. Chafee's pointed this out many times, is that it's about the 10-year mark that we see them start to fall apart. And then some people will say, oh, well, I know vegans that, never fell apart and they're doing great. Well, there is that chance that they did eat meat and didn't tell anyone, or, maybe they supplemented with something or what have you. I think if you supplement, there's a way you can make it through, but it just doesn't seem optimal. And then we know that more animals die planting fields and crops than us slaughtering animals for feed or to eat or will ever.
Yeah, but they don't want
significant.
That's a message. Yeah, that's a message they don't believe and they don't want to hear. It's well, they'll always have a counter argument, and it's just their the one thing they land on is just well, I care about the animals, so then the argument stops. You can't really have an intelligent conversation with them.
Yeah. I mean, all animals are going to die, including us, and eventually the plants are going to eat us. So that's kind of the way it works. Right? We go into the ground, and the plants are going to send roots and use us up too. So
yeah. So are you involved with Dr. Sean Baker? I don't know much about his business or the company that he started, but can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, I did his certification for Carnivore Diet Coach, and it's basically his program that he laid out and what he finds is the most successful way of doing carnivore, and he teaches that, and he teaches us how to teach other people. So I've trained trained people how to just go from not knowing carnivore to jumping on board, and also the different pitfalls that you could run into, or things that you might think are a pitfall are really just like an adaptation. Because there are some things that if you just go straight carnivore overnight, that you can run into that aren't fun, and he kind of just teaches us how to mitigate that and his way of doing things. So it's a great program actually for people that want to would like to have somebody supervise them do it, or at least know what should I do or how to do it.
That's interesting. So how many people do you work with on a weekly basis?
It's like 3, 4, I think 4 is probably the most I've done in 1 week. And,
Okay.
it kind of goes up and down. I don't really advertise, as much anymore. And most of the clients that I get are trying to, that they want to build muscle and they want to work out while on carnivore. So most of the clients that I get are based on my profile that I put up, and also addicts that are switching to carnivore for that reason. I get a lot of clients that are coming from that world or ex-military. So, and that's the cool thing about that program. If you go on Revero, you can see there's all the different coaches, and everybody has a story, how they got where they're at. And I think that's kind of where it's cool, is you can find a coach that fits your where you're coming from, which is nice.
That's cool, man. So I have to ask, do y'all ever cheat at all? Ever? Like even like once, like on holidays and stuff, do y'all go off the wagon a little bit?
Yeah. So, and I think I think it's fine. Right. I think as long as your daily habits are consistent with proper human diet, I think you're fine. Like when we went to Canada to visit her family, and her family's carnivore. Her dad's carnivore. Her dad's in the best shape of his life. Her mom is like the same size she was when she was in high school. So they were ready to feed us meat and this and that. But her dad's Italian, right? So I was like, okay, no. I came to Canada. I would like all this, the Italian meats, and bring out the homemade wine that you always have. And he's like, really? You want to eat that? I said, yeah. And he's like, okay. And I said, well, I'm on vacation. I would like to just enjoy myself a little bit. And I had some of his red wine. His red wine doesn't have all the additives and crap that we add to wine here in the States. So that's another avenue. I don't know if you've ever looked into how wine is made here.
Yeah.
If you ever do.
Yep.
It's not pretty, right? So his homemade wine, I was like, you know what? I would love to have that. So I drank a little wine. I had some, I think I had a cannoli. I put some maple syrup on steak, which is kind of a practice they do, and nothing bad happened, right? And I think as long as it's a natural, thing, you're pretty safe. But there's no reason to torture yourself around, but definitely don't do it every day.
Yeah, don't make it
a habit. Yeah.
So last time I talked to your wife, she was about to open her online business, and people could get blood work done, and she can consult with them. And that's partly y'all do it together, is what you said in the beginning, right?
Yeah, I do a lot of like back end stuff. She's the brains. Don't let me fool you. She's the brains of the operation. So
is that now up and running?
Yeah, we on our Facebook page we posted some links, and then our YouTube channel we actually have some like a discount code and stuff in there. So a lot of doctors don't focus or even understand carnivore or have an ability to interpret the data from your blood work if you are on carnivore, and they're immediately going to want to put you on statins, right? So her program is pretty easy because you can order the blood kit to your house, or you can, and then you could take it somewhere and have it drawn, and then they ship it off. So she can help clients all over the country, and then she gives you they'll do a Zoom call and then talk about how this fits into what you're doing. She'll ask you questions about your lifestyle, and then be able to kind of come up with an angle for you to go at it based on your blood results. Maybe some things you're doing wrong or some things you shouldn't do. Right. But it can be very scary, to get blood work done after carnivore. And then, like my LDL is always in the 400s.
Damn.
Yeah. And in lack of the inflammatory markers and the bad LDL, which is oxidative LDL, which mine is below the chart. I basically almost have no oxidative LDL, which is the sticky LDL.
Right.
So my LDL is high, but LDL is a transport molecule for all the things that you need in your body. Half the people that have heart attacks have normal LDL, right? Or so-called normal LDL. So it's not really a marker for anything if you are on a carnivore diet, because the other things play they have more of an impact.
So when you got your blood work done, were there, other than the LDL, were there any other surprises that kind of jumped out at you that frightened you or made you want to take a step back?
Yeah, well, initially, like I said, I was talking about my MPO, mild-peroxidase, was through the roof, right? And I have, and let me tell you something, going on carnivore doesn't cure everything overnight, okay? My mild-peroxidase, my last blood work, and I've got it done almost every 2 months. I have 5 or 6 blood panels every 2 months since I started. The only one on my blood marker, or the only one that's had normal mild-peroxidase, was my most recent one. Okay. Every single time it's going down, but when it's in the 2000s and it's going down 500, it takes a while. It doesn't just happen overnight. And a lot of people have problems with like high homocysteine levels. That doesn't happen overnight. HSCRP, all these inflammatory markers, you have to start eating right and do it for a while before it goes back down. This doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't cure overnight. So, I had to do this for almost a year just to get to the point where my blood is now showing that I'm not doing damage to my arteries.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah.
That's crazy. So you kind of mentioned it, but how can people, if they want to work with you and your wife and get these blood results in and done, how can they do that?
Yeah, there's some links in my carnivore group. Like I said, on Facebook, Carnivore Harder, Happier, Healthier. Her website is stemcelltherapypro.com. I believe still that. Yeah. Stemcelltherapypro.com. And then we also have a YouTube channel, which is Harder, Happier, Healthier. And in most of the videos, we post the links on the bottom where you can do that. We have some other links. You can follow us on Instagram. Some of those links are also on Instagram too. So, but we put that. Hers is at Dr. Solt, DrSolt. Mine's Carnivorous Z, just Z at the end, at Carnivorous Z. Yeah, I think it's great because these doctors are going to see this blood work and be like, whoa,
Yeah.
And that's the other thing is all the information we have or data on bad cholesterol comes from people that eat meat, but they're also eating all the other junk too. We don't have any data on just meat eaters. We have data on people that are eating meat between two slices of bread, and we call those meat eaters, right?
Right.
That doesn't make any sense. There's a huge bias there towards meat that is also based on the other junk that they're eating. So
yeah. Well, Zach, I appreciate this time, man. If I always like to ask this question, or a similar question, what's the one thing that people can do to make a positive impact on their health and their life? If there's one thing, if they don't want to switch to carnivore, if they don't want to throw out their plastic and food containers, what's one thing that they could do?
Honestly, I think it's seed oils. Cutting out seed oils like it's the plague, right? Because and this is the thing that people don't understand, is that seed oils cause your body, your cells and your muscles to be insulin resistant. In other words, they signal the overload of those fats, those polyunsaturated fats, tell your muscle cells to stop intaking insulin. So your blood sugar goes through the roof. It's one of the things that causes diabetes. I mean, having too much sugar, it'd be very difficult to just eat sugar and get diabetes if you weren't also, the seed oils have a huge part to play. And that comes from the evolution. Actually, Dr. Paul Saladino has several videos on this that explain why that's what causes insulin resistance. But I think it's super important. No more seed oils. Like if you did one thing and just avoided those like the plague, I think you would be a lot healthier, honestly.
Awesome, Zach. Well, man, I appreciate this time, and I can't wait to put this one out, man.
All right, buddy. Thanks, brother.
All right, man. I'll talk to you later, bud. Have a good one.
Sir. See you.
Bye.